Hey everyone, Warrax here. Welcome to the first episode of Warrax's Soapbox. So what this series is going to be is I've decided that I want to just make videos where I talk about things that I've been seeing a lot of conversation about, either through social media or through Discord or just the general WoW discourse, and kind of give my thoughts on it. Sometimes it'll be controversial topics, sometimes it won't be controversial topics, sometimes it'll just be me picking something that I find interesting and talking about them. So I'm gonna hopefully try to do these once a week, maybe once every other week, depending on my time and kind of my motivation to make videos. Just to kind of quickly go over the format, I'm going to try to keep these videos to between 15 and 20 minutes. This one may go longer than that because it's the first one. And you're not going to see any gameplay. This is just how it's going to look. It's just going to be me sitting on my soapbox. In fact, one of the things that I might do is just, we'll do this one here, where my face is a little bit bigger. And you end up kind of seeing just, my thoughts and my thought process on certain things. We have Pepe here with us here, my guy right here. He's right there. He's going to hang out with us because this week we're going to be talking about two subjects, really, because I don't think neither of them really need a deep conversation about. The first one is going to be about the weak auras controversy and kind of what happened. So for those of you that are unaware, during the most recent MDI Global Finals, the winning team Echo has a weak aura that they use in Court of Stars that basically solves the puzzle for you in terms of trying to find the spy. So let me pull some information from the creator of that weak aura. That would be now from Echo. And let me see if I could find the tweet real quick. And he even admits that this weak aura is kind of busted. So he says, since MDI is over, I'll post arguably the most broken M+ weak aura that exists. Been holding on to this one, but now that MDI is over, there's no need. Court spy auto select, basically right click any spy and it will automatically talk to it if it's the correct one. And he says it's a huge time save. Basically, he found out that the UI squad, when he creates his UI, he has a whole team of people that help him make it. They found this all the way back in beta, and somehow this topic stayed hidden. So basically, if you want to go through the code, you absolutely can. But basically, it just kind of selects the spy for you. Now, there are already ways in game to kind of make this search faster. Obviously, normally you talk to the 5 Nightborn and you find out what the 5 clues are, and then you have to kind of play hide and seek with it from there. Now, the other things that you can do is that once you have all 5 clues, a demon hunter can use spectral sight and it'll point out the spy. That is an in-game mechanic that is fully intended by Blizzard. And for paladins, holy and prop paladins in particular, if you have Truth Guard, which is the prop paladin artifact weapon skin mogged, then you actually can get the effects that Truth Guard gave you back in Legion, which is when you walk up to the pack that has the spy in it, the entire pack glows, and then you narrow down your search from there. Now, neither of these, you still have to do some work. You have to get the 5 clues for the Demon Hunter, and for the Paladin, you still have to figure out some of the clues in order to figure out which one to talk to. It just narrows down the search of which one you're chasing after. Whereas Now's weak aura basically solves the puzzle for you without any effort. You just go around, click a few things, look like you're wandering around aimlessly. So this caused a lot of controversy. A lot of people think that Echo is exploiting the game when they use this weak aura. Funny thing though, they actually didn't even win Court of Stars dungeon that run. They lost that in the finals. So it didn't even really win them the map. But what it has done is caused a new kind of roaring discussion around weak auras. Now, I'm a big weak aura fan. I use a lot of them here, as you can see, just with what I have loaded. Obviously, my stats right down here that you can't see, they're behind this portrait. But I use efficient stats to kind of allow you guys to see what my stats are as we're going through. I use Luxthos' class packages, which you see here. Rateability timeline, which takes the bars from weak DBM and bigwigs and makes them a timeline. And then, of course, my mouse cursor, which you guys have seen. I use Ultimate Mouse Cursor. And then I have stuff for things like M+ Timer, the Thundering Affix, just the general Dragonflight Dungeon package, some rad stuff for Raid as well on the fights that I needed on. I'll be looking into Securog ones here soon, since we're going to be doing prog on that. And so, but all of the weak auras that I do share the same sort of thing that they do. They make information easier for me to decipher. So instead of the personal resource bar, which is fine but not great, and like using my bars to actually track all of my cooldowns and stuff, it's just right here in this package. So it has a cast bar on it. It goes away when I'm doing things like dragon riding. But the reality is that almost all the weak auras that I use are basically informational in nature. So like if I come over here to this normal tank dummy, for example, like it shows you when I have cooldowns coming up. Like it shows the 2-strike Crusader aura, you know, it shows cooldown on Wake of Ashes, and it's all right in the middle of my screen so that I can do things like hide the action bars if I wanted, which unfortunately right now you can't hide anything. You can't hide the first action bar, which for me is this bar here. So it's pointless to hide them all because I can't hide the one that I need. But they're basically completely informational. Now, weak auras do have an incredible level of depth to them. And as you can see, they do things like play the game for you. They make determining information faster. I know that a few people that I run keys with do things like have a thing in Quarter Stars, which basically helps you determine what buffs and what mini boss triggers you can use when you walk into the courtyard of Quarter Stars. Weak auras like this have been around for a long time that basically play the game for you. World First Raiders have been using them and abusing them because it gives them a competitive advantage in getting the world first kills of bosses. And there's always been a controversy around, should an add-on play the game for you? Is it like a botting type experience? Now, Blizzard has been very, very quiet overall on the subject because for the most part, I don't think they know exactly what they want to do with it. I think a lot of them see the power of things like the class packages or rateability timeline, or even something like efficient stats, which are just there to be informational. They just add depth to UIs and user accessibility and customization that they really like. What they don't like are things that play the game for you. You know, they had weak auras back, for example, in old Archimond and WoD, where basically it allowed you to draw lines on your screen. They've broken stuff that does that. So they have exerted some power over weak auras in the past. And this new conversation is back again. So overall, my thoughts on weak auras are that I'm 100% okay if they give you information. So things like these class packages, rateability timeline, efficient stats behind the camera here, all of these things I think are perfectly acceptable to have as add-ons in your game, because all they do is make the sometimes very complex nature of World of Warcraft much easier to digest in ways that are visually satisfying or visually eye-catching to each individual user. For example, Senarth's pull on Mythic, I have a badass alarm that goes off because I died to the pull like 3 or 4 times because I just tune out the traditional noise of like bigwigs. But I change the noise and all of a sudden now I get a new sound cue that tells me, hey, grip is going, and I haven't died to it since. So it just allows for some, well, except for on our kill. So it just allows for things like that, for information to be much easily digestible so that I can maximize the performance that I'm doing. What I don't approve of are things like Now's Weak Aura that plays the game for you, takes all of the interesting and small challenges out of the game. Now, some would argue that weak auras like this are necessary because a dungeon like Quarter Stars has a massive amount of RP involved in it, which means that the dungeon is much longer than it really needs to be. And that's a different subject. It's should RP be in Mythic Plus dungeons? I may do another soapbox on that another day. But anything that takes control of your success out of your hands and automates it, to me, is a bad idea. And at least in video games, like video games have always been designed to put control of everything possible in the user's hands and allows them to do and show off these measures of skill expression that aren't otherwise going to be able to be satisfied in other forms. So when you have something like this weak aura for Quarter Stars that basically takes away the skill expression and the ability to kind of quickly do a puzzle, I kind of understand why people are, somewhat upset by it. So that's my thoughts on that. The second subject that I want to talk about are the fact that there are no there are new keys that are being done that are in the mid 20s, where there are 4 DPS, 1 prop paladin, and no healer in the group. Now, the thing about this is there's a combination of people that are either really impressed with the fact that these tank players can kind of handle both tanking and somewhat the healing role all at the same time. And then there are others that are usually the healer mains that are saying, look, our role is so bad in Mythic Plus that it's not even needed. My opinion on the whole 4 tank or 4 DPS no healer keys is that I think them being viable to be done by very skilled and coordinated groups is fine. If you have a group that is coordinated enough and putting in the practice enough to make it so that they can render a healer as not needed in a group and time a dungeon that is a plus 25, plus 26, whatever the key is, then, you know, more power to those folks. We've seen these weird feats of strength in WoW for as long as WoW has been around. What I don't like is the fact that I think people are generally missing the point. The general point about this type of setup is that A, there's only one tank that can do it, and that's Prop Paladin, because they do enough damage and enough off healing for themselves and other party members. They're quite literally one of only 2 tanks that has the ability to heal other party members without having to stop and cast. Guardian Druid being the other, with After the Wildfire being the way that they do that. But even then, that requires a level of an amount of rage being dumped into Iron Fur and Raise in order to satisfy that. So you're not constantly healing everyone else. You burst heal them every 20, 30, 45 seconds, which in some cases is not going to be enough to cover the healing needed for a certain spot. Whereas Prop Paladin can literally spend 3 Holy Power and heal all freaking day. So there's only one tank that can do it in Prop Paladin. And it also requires, in some cases, some dungeons not so much, but in some dungeons it does require that you have strong off healing from your party. Now, Dragonflight has seen the introduction of things like Ancestral Guidance, Nature's Vigil, talents that allow for DPS to do a little bit of Dracul off healing as part of their main rotation or without having to lose damage. And a lot of the dungeons that are being timed with 4 DPS and 1 Prop Paladin have 2 or more, generally speaking, of Shaman, Druid, Ret Paladin, something that has off-healing capabilities through Ancestral Guidance, Nature's Vigil, or an ability that enhances their off-healing through the damage that they do. Because of this, that's kind of the only way some of these keys are getting timed. So it's not just the Prop Paladin that's doing it. There also is a measure of DPS kind of sinking points into their off-healing capabilities to ensure that the group can stay alive. The third thing that's kind of being missed is that while the feat is very cool, I think it's a very much a knife's edge situation. It's not enough to say, oh, just nerf Prop Paladin or nerf Ancestral Guidance or Nature's Vigil or whatever. I think that stuff like this is on a very delicate balance. Now, we've seen 4 DPS Prop Paladin keys go on in the past. This has happened in almost every expansion since I've come back. It happened in BFA, it's happened in Shadowlands, it's happened now, of course, in Dragonflight. The thing about the other expansions is that those were happening very late into the season when your scaling was at its highest. So Season 4 of BFA, Season 4 of Dragonflight. Here we're doing it in Season 1 when there's still more power creep still to happen for each of these, for all of classes and all specs. And Prop Paladin already at like 421 eye level or so, whatever I don't know what the eye levels are. I know they're 420s. Is already able to kind of do this. Kind of shows that Prop Paladin off healing is kind of in a spot where it might be too strong, and it's going to need to be nerfed. The problem is that the Prop Paladin still relies a lot on self healing in order to maintain itself, and for less skilled players, taking away some of the powerful, strong healing that the spec has kind of puts the spec into a situation where it's still very usable by the most high-end players and the best players of the spec. But for the general population, it becomes a spec that becomes very difficult to manage. And Prop Paladin is still one of the most popular tanks in WoW. It has been for a very, very long time. It just has a really cool fantasy of both being a tank and a pseudo support character with things like Word of Glory healing, Blessing of Sacrifice, and things like that, that allow you to support your teammates while also being a tank of the party. It's a very powerful feeling and a very powerful fantasy, and it is being met at probably the best way that it's been met since I've come back to the game in BFA. But I do think that it needs to be looked at. I also think things like Nature's Vigil and Ancestral Guardian and anything else that is like do damage, do healing, from DPS specs in particular, needs to be looked at. Because if you can just get 4 off healers and a strong healing tank, like, you're never going to need a healer again, and it kind of makes the role's usefulness out. To me, like, once 4 healer or 4 DPS, no healer keys become like the way to do keys, then that's when it's going to become the problem. And that's kind of the knife's edge that we're sitting on right now. But again, I think it's a little bit limited because it's only one tank that does have some overtuning in its kit right now, with particularly with Word of Glory. Ever since 10.0.7's release, Prop Paladin has been the strongest tank in the meta because its tree adjustments really kind of super amped their power creep in ways that I don't think a lot of people were expecting, because they were allowed to take things that they couldn't get before because of the restricted pathing of the tree. Now, I'm still saying that the tree path should have been fixed. It's very much a quality of life improvement, but it allowed for some power creep in there that I don't think anyone was really expecting or anticipating. And so, what's the solution to this? I think the solution to this is ultimately going to be 2 things that happen. I think Word of Glory healing is going to get nerfed, whether it's through talents. Let me pull the talents here. Whether it's through just its normal natural power, or you're going to be looking at certain talents that end up getting nerfed. Things like Light of the Titans, Seal of Charity, and even Hand of the Protector. I think any of those you could see them getting nerfed, because it's just, these are kind of the talents that really enable Word of Glory off healing type specs. You're sacrificing a little bit of damage or defense in order to get that strong off healing. So there is a trade-off for it, but right now the trade-off isn't really that much. Like, if you're going into a strong off healing role, you better not be doing a ton of damage, and Prop Paladins are still doing a ton of damage. Or you better not be a very, very sturdy tank. Prop Paladins are one of the sturdiest tanks right now. So I think just overall the spec itself is just in a really strong position, and probably is going to see some tuning before 10.1 releases. I think we're going to get some last minute nerfs to WoG, and I think that's could be construed as being reasonable, because you don't want a spec like Prop Paladin to power creep out of control with its healing in particular, to where it basically pushes healers out of being able to play Mythic Plus. And it makes Prop Paladin kind of mandatory for high key pushing as a result, and that kind of reduces the class variety that we're seeing in the highest keys, which has been the best that we've seen it in any Mythic Plus season since ever, I think. So that's my thoughts on those 2 subjects. Let me know what you think down below. What do you think? What are your opinions on weak auras solving the game and playing the game for you? And what are your thoughts on 4 DPS, 1 healer or no healer keys? Leave your thoughts down below. Give me your thoughts, comments, all that good stuff. If you like this type of stuff, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Again, it really does truly help the channel, especially because I'm on that road to 1,000 subs. So yeah, that's what I've all for this video, guys. So until the next one, I hope you all stay safe. Hope you enjoy yourselves. You're having fun. You keep on gaming. And I will see you all in the next video.